And now we're coming to a final panel, and we've got Ron Painter, CEO of the National Association of Workforce Boards, who's going to sum up all of this for us. And he's got the assistance of 5 outstanding panelists. I'm going to introduce them briefly and then turn it over to Ron. So sitting on my left, we have Jason Palmer, Deputy Director of Post-Secondary Success for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Here to my immediate left is Senator Ann Millner. She's a senator in the Utah State Senate, but she's really devoted her whole career to the issues we're talking about. For many years, she was president of Weber State in Utah and a real leader in the state of Utah. To our immediate right, we have Patricia Wallace, Director of Workforce Development for Maricopa County. So she's leading this work right here. You're right in Maricopa County now, in case you didn't realize that. Sitting next to her is Jamai Blivin, the extraordinary CEO of Innovate+Educate. And finally, we have Laurie, Larrea, the president of the Workforce Board, essentially, in Greater Dallas, and one of the nation's leading workforce boards. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ron Painter.
It's still morning. It's not morning on the East Coast, but it's morning. How are we doing? All right, we're ready. My name is, as Bill mentioned, I'm Ron Painter. It's my pleasure to get to be the CEO for the National Association of Workforce Boards. We represent the workforce boards in Washington, D.C. and around the country. So what the panel has been, what we want to talk about is about partnerships and collaboration, and it's you got 5 people here who have extraordinary experience and extraordinary insight into this subject. I want you to know that we've also prepped the panel beforehand. So just a quick reminder of the rules. The first question in this first round is worth 10 points each. Oh wait, no. Oh, I'm sorry. I got confused. That was yesterday we were doing the game show. Okay. What we want to explore is partnership and collaboration, and I hope if you have a question and you want to feel compelled to ask it, please raise your hand. What I'm going to do is ask Jason, starting with you, talk a little bit about your work at Gates, and then how's that relate to what we've been talking about the last couple of days in terms of pathways.
Great.
So a couple of minutes each.
Sure. So I'm honored to be here, and the Gates Foundation approaches this space with a lot of humility. The team I lead at Gates focuses on what we call post-secondary innovation, which is working with colleges and universities that are doing new and novel things that will improve the outcomes of low-income, minority, and first-generation college-goers. About half of our team at Gates are first-generation college-goers ourselves. And the reason I say we approach this work with a lot of humility is we have invested about $100 million a year for the last 7 years in things ranging from scholarship programs, workforce, college connection programs, online and blended learning programs, competency-based education, MOOCs. The list could go on, and we haven't found any silver bullets, but we have found some things. Almost always what we do is when we make a grant of $2 million or more, we attach an evaluation to it to measure the efficacy of the program. We set out ambitious goals at the beginning, and then we say, how did this program live up to its goals, either in terms of number of students who actually got placed into jobs, or number of students who graduated, or progression, credit accumulation, things of that sort. And working at this for about 7 years now, we've realized this is actually very difficult work. We sort of realized it coming in, but we do feel like there's a couple things we've accomplished which we feel great about. College access has been a big goal of not just the Gates Foundation, but many foundations for decades. But now college completion, and talking about it in terms of the credential you earn, not just a degree. Certificates are very important in our new 21st century economy, and there are too many students who are going in and just thinking it's a 4-year degree that might take 6 years, but now certificates are making big strides, up to almost 1 million students getting certificates in the last year across the country. And anyway, how we're connected to this work is we don't succeed without partnerships. We're basically just an investor. We invest in colleges and organizations that are trying to make a difference for the students that we care about. And so all of you are potential partners of ours, and that's why we're here, to learn from all of you and to share what we've learned over the last 7 years.
Well, thank you all very much for this opportunity. As I've been sitting in on sessions, it brings me back to my own roots, just to give you a little bit of a flavor from my background. I have been at Weber State University for 34 years, and I say I grew up there. But one of the roles that I had at Weber State was in CTE. So I understand this work both from the standpoint of being inside an institution, as well as starting to reframe and rethink how do I think about it as a policymaker in my role now. I had the opportunity to serve, kind of, as I said, grow up at Weber State, and I became the president and served there in 10 years in the presidency, and then step down and started teaching, but then I decided to run for office. And now I'm serving in the state senate in Utah. My first committee assignments are in education, economic development, and workforce services. So it's really focused on areas that I have a passion for myself, and I actually was made the Senate chair of the Education Committee. So it's a real opportunity for me to be able to think about policy from pre-K up through our higher education systems, and then how do we align that with our workforce needs in our area and supporting economic development and growth, which is a really high priority in the state of Utah. So that's kind of the framework that I bring to this, and really what I'm trying to work through now is how I know how this works in terms of kind of focusing on regional needs, interacting and engaging with employers at the regional level, trying to bring partners together both in public ed and our UCAT for us, our technical college system, et cetera, to meet those needs, kind of working across our systems. How do I leverage that now at the state level in terms of thinking about public policy that will allow us to create that kind of alignment across our state? So this is a really important discussion.
Patricia?
Good morning, everyone. I'm pleased and happy to be here with you this morning, and really am supportive of all the work that all of us are doing collectively here in the state of Arizona, as well as nationally, to cultivate our young folks across the country to fill the needs of our industry and business. And I think as a workforce director here in the Phoenix region, we are very committed to being as innovative and creative to find new solutions to help connect to the work you're doing, help to support the work you're doing, and leverage the work that's being done, not only locally, but nationally with partnerships, like the Gates Foundation and the Markle Foundation, Aspen Institute, and the 100,000 Initiative, United Healthcare. There's so many different players in this space that are trying to support and get at the work that we're all doing. So we're really pleased to be part of that. And with Maricopa County being the 4th largest county in the country with over 4 million people, there's a huge need here to cultivate talent and to help industry thrive. And so as a workforce director, my goal is to make sure that we're pipelining talent, connecting to talent, finding talent, and helping those individuals either, connect to the employers or, be those levers that the other community-based organizations can pull so that we can help connect those dots. So we really want to be, the convener, the dot connector, the partner, the friend, whatever it takes to help folks get into the career pathway of their choice, of their desire, and to make industry and all of us be successful collectively.
Good afternoon. I was in DC earlier, so I had to make sure I knew what time it was. I'm thrilled to be here. Bill, congratulations on another great summit. We were here last year, and that was great. And as I realized, Innovate+Educate is a national nonprofit located in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and we're actually working in Utah, Phoenix, and Dallas. So I'm here with my good friends. All of our work is really shifting the model to a competency-based system. So, yeah, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about that, but we would not be able to do any of it without what this panel's about, which is partnership. We're honored to have an office in the Dallas Web, which is just amazing. We have an office in the Albuquerque Web, and we are office out of Utah Technology Council in Salt Lake City. Here in Phoenix, we're working with the Markle Foundation. So partnership is what it takes, and I'm sure we'll be talking a lot more about that.
Thank you, and good morning or afternoon. Howdy. Laurie Larrea, I'm president of Workforce Solutions Greater Dallas, which is the Dallas County Workforce Board. We are loving that we partner with I&E, loving that we are pretty far along the journey of WIOA. Workforce Innovation Opportunity hit Texas about 1996. And as of September this year, we will be in the full evolution. So as a workforce president, our board oversees WIOA dollars, TANF employment and training, food stamp employment and training, child care assistance to the tune of $55 million, adult education, and we will assume rehabilitation on September 1 by state law. So, when you look at WIOA and you look at Texas, you sort of see that it is a template for the true vision of what that means. Employers are our primary customer. We are all about partnerships. We don't run direct programs in the boards in Texas. There's 28 of us. We are all contracting out all services. We work very closely with our community college system, less so with our ISDs, and extremely well with our four-year institutions, and that's kind of where we are in Texas. So I'm here today to kind of tack on not only partnerships, but partnerships reflected in WIOA and what we all have to do to get this thing moving down the road and get some progress behind us, right? Because I think that is what's come about. The partnerships are very critical to that vision, but there's a lot of work to be done along the way.
All right. Now, I mentioned earlier that we had some conversation before the panel, so understand as a Pittsburgh boy, I agreed that I would not ask Laurie to comment on the Cowboys draft. So
I'm gonna hurt him.
For those of you who were, hoping to get our analysis of the draft, you'll have to wait till after the session. But Laurie, let me start with you, and I want to come back down the panel because I want to ask all of you work in organizations where collaboration is a part of what you do. What have you learned about what's effective in collaborations and the more formal? I guess collaboration being the informal process we use, partnership being the more formal process, but give me some observation of what you've learned works well in the collaborations that you've experienced. Maybe an example of a project that's really gone well and kind of an analysis of how did that go well.
Absolutely. I'll just give you my personal tenets. Negotiating is a bit different, and I do a lot of negotiating. I've done that for 30 plus years. Partnerships are different. In a partnership, integrity is first and foremost, but also putting all your cards on the table in terms of what you can bring to the partnership. And I think we see that with Jamai working with us. She shows up. She says, I've got this Walmart grant. I didn't have a retail strategy at the time, and I said, ooh, I have this empty cubicle. Let's find you some staff and get this thing going. It was not a process of me deciding, let me see what I can get out of this. That is not the first question. First question is, what do I have to give to this partnership? Unless you don't believe in the partnership, and then you just need to put your cards on the table day one and say, sorry, we're not going to do this. Don't string people along. They don't appreciate it as you would not appreciate it. But in partnerships, all too often I hear people say, well, what's in it for me? If that's your first question, you're not a good partner. Your partnership should be, what can I do to facilitate this? Because I think it's a good idea. And as we go down the road, I'll see what else I can do. Don't strip your system, but give people as much as you can give.
Yeah, and thank you, Laurie. We both are outspoken, so we would tell each other if we were upset with each other. But I mean, I think one of the most important things we've learned is it's very different to go into a different city that's not your home. So Albuquerque, New Mexico, it's our home. So we're there every day. But when we go into a city where it's not our home, we have tremendous respect for the people that are doing that work. So we try not to come in and say, okay, this is how you're going to do it. We would never do that because the work that's on the ground that is happening is so critical. Our role is to really try to create a system that will continue around competency-based hiring, education, and training. When I think about all the work that's happened in Dallas, it's caused a lot of work on Laurie's team too, but it's because she sees a benefit of how it will help her employers, her job seekers, and the partners. So it really is how she described. We've made some mistakes. We haven't put somebody in a city, and that's really difficult. If we go into a community, we hire someone within that community because otherwise we really are a foreigner. And it's really difficult to get anything done. So in each of the 7 cities we're working now, we have somebody on the ground supporting that work that's part of the community. So that's important.
And I think for me, being in this space for nearly 20 years and seeing the different types of partnerships and collaboratives, I think the really critical piece is once you do decide that you're going to engage in some work and you are going to form that partnership, it's really important to have clarity and understand how is everyone coming into this, what are they looking to achieve, what do they need to achieve, report back to the folks that we all have, obligations to, whether it be funders or direct supervisors or our systems, and really once you get that clarity and have that open communication and honest conversation, laying all your cards on the table from the get-go, which is a little uncomfortable at times, but you have to do that in order to forge that authentic relationship with the people that you're going to engage with. And then from there, I think you all have to discern what level of commitment. Are we 1 foot in, 1 foot out, or are we both feet in 150%? And I know I've personally been in collaboratives where it was, I'm 30% in because I don't think this is going to work. And I personally will not engage if I'm not willing to put in 100% at the minimum. And so I think that's so critical and so key to talk about up front, because if you don't, you're going to get on your way to Abilene and you're not going to be happy. And then I think the third thing that's really important is courage. It is not easy. It is not easy. And the difficult conversations and the accountability that you have to have. But if you set the stage for that good partnership from the onset, you can have those difficult conversations. You can have those successes and have those failures together. And I think it's also, we choose what we do with what we have. And if you choose to let those failures put a wedge, or if you choose to let those failures bring you closer together, which is personally what I choose to do, is then that helps strengthen us and it helps us get closer to our goal. So I think those are the 3 things that are really critical for any partnerships we look to. And a lot of times we do say no. We have partnerships that ask and inquire, and I'm going to tell you, we went from being the least popular kid in the class to the most popular kid in the class with this new, reauthorization under WIOA, and everybody wants us to be what they want us to be, and it's so difficult sometimes to say to people, we are not the right partner. But I think it's important for us to have that honest communication and let them know up front so that we don't string people along and we get into projects or into things that we really have no business being involved with. So I think those are really critical pieces. And that courage is hard. You gotta force yourself to do it. You got to force yourself to meet new people. You got to force yourself to have conversations. And I don't know how Laurie is, but as a newer, younger director in this network of 550, workforce boards, I pick up the phone and I call my colleagues across this country and I learn from them. I ask them questions, and I say to myself before I have that conversation, okay, they're probably going to think this is the dumbest question, but I call anyway, and not once has any of my colleagues across the country said, Patricia, I'm just so glad that you picked up the phone and that you asked and you inquired and you tapped that wealth of knowledge that has happened way before I ever came into this space. And so I think that is also a piece that we have to take upon ourselves, is to ask and to inquire and to apply ourselves, which is not always easy. It's not always easy. Before
I come to this side of the table, because I have a different take I want to talk to both of you about with collaboration, but I want to come back to a point that Patricia made and ask probably more so Laurie and Jamai. The double R, the reticence and the risk when you sit down at the table to talk to somebody about, because there's a lot of competitive grants out there now for everything. How do you overcome what Patricia said, like you're in, you're out? How do you overcome, what are some of the things that you do around that risk and reticence for quote, partner organizations?
I think for us in Dallas, we're on the lookout for something that we don't have. So I'm very conscious when there's something we don't have. I generally don't need a microphone. Okay. Just forgot for a minute. One of the things that I think has been exceptional for us is we get a lot of people who have a lot of heart. And if I see they have heart and there is truly a need, and I don't like somebody who comes to me and says, well, what do you need? No, that's not how the game is played. Mine is, well, what do you have for us? We're the workforce board. What do you have? Well, what do you need? No, we're not playing that game. You want to know how much money I can give you and what problem you can solve for me. Basically, you ring my phone, you better be calling me either to ask a question, which I love, or that you would like to solve a problem that you've identified in my community and you have the solution. And I will back you up all day long, and putting my name behind it in my community means a little bit. So I have to be careful with that. I don't want to risk that. But if I see heart and a solution and a problem identified, I'll write it. I will stick with them and defend them and put our heart with their heart.
So Laurie, part of this is in an earlier session, and we hear this constantly in our business. We talk about these soft skills. Between organizations, trust is a very large part of am I hearing that right? That's a large part of how you've got to work this to overcome risk and reticence.
Absolutely, and it's also that you, as Jamai puts it, she knew Dallas before she hit Dallas. She did her homework. She knew what needed to happen. She wasn't just a nonprofit coming in saying, well, I do this over here, maybe I should do this here. No, she had actually scoped out the stats. She knew there was a retail issue. It was a driving force in our economy, and it was not being identified. It wasn't being handled. She came with a solution.
Jamai, your observation on these R&R, the risk and reticence.
Yeah, the only thing that came to me is this warrior. Like, we want to work with warriors. We want to work with people that are in it for the fight. We have one of the worst situations in our country right now when it comes to youth unemployment, the lack of understanding between demand and supply. So I really think because running a nonprofit is really hard. You beg for money all the time. Anybody that's out there knows that you beg for money and you're always making sure your doors are open. But I think we're in a good place now that we can be a little more selective. We want to work with warriors. We want to work with people that are willing to be disruptive and put up the fight for a changing system. So here's some warriors. And so I think that's key for us, is really people that are going to be disruptive and not afraid to come into a community and fight for this system change.
So slightly, because many times I'm guessing groups or quote partnerships come to you and to talk about what they need in the state budget. Jason, what they need Gates to do.
what do you listen for? How do you intuitively hear that this is a collaboration? You know, what's key, Ian, that you've learned, Jason, that you've learned?
Well, for me, I think it's thinking about a number of things, and I actually like the work that's being done around collective impact, because I think it is starting to help us think about these partnerships in a little bit different way, in a way that's much more outcome focused. So for me, the first thing is thinking about what's the problem they're trying to solve, and do they have a definition of that, and have they collected data? Can they kind of show what's there and why it's a problem? The second, and are there then kind of measurable outcomes from that we could measure about whether or not this collaboration, partnership, collective impact effort could make a difference? So very outcome focused, very data driven, for me is extremely important. The second is, are we aligning services? Are we aligning support? I can take almost any given problem out there, and you can find a number of different groups that are working on that problem independently in silos. Are people starting to say, how to align our services? And I'll just give you an example, one example of that. This past session, I ran a bill called Partnerships for Student Success. It's really focused on taking particularly at-risk schools, Title I schools, and helping them align services around those schools to help those children and their families succeed, because we know the interventions have to be more broadly focused. And what it said is the partners have to come in and they collectively have to sign an agreement about how they're going to bring those services to the table, how they're going to align, how they're going to share data, how they're going to coordinate these efforts to make sure we're getting the kind of alignment we need to, that's going to be outcome focused. So it's not a matter of just saying, oh, here's somebody I can call and I can send them to this group or this agency. It's about how are we going to align what we do and really work together at the table on an ongoing basis to help make those things happen. And I think the real significant piece we have missing right now is that alignment of our services and our willingness to say, gee, instead of just saying, send me these folks, or let's build some kind of referral system, we've got to think through in a very different way, how do we align those services and how do we build a system-focused model that can align the services.
Jason, lots of people come to you guys. I heard you had Gates has a few dollars.
I'm amazed. Ann and I sat next to each other sort of by accident when we sat down, but my answer is very similar. We look for people who come to us with data and know what outcomes they're trying to drive. It's almost exactly the same as what you just said. And then the next piece, this alignment, we have kind of another phase to that, which is that, not only are you aligned with what our goals are and how we think about the world and how we want to invest. Like just to give an anecdote, I can't believe how many people come to talk to the Gates Foundation that don't know what our major initiatives are. Now you could say, how could you know? I mean, this is the first time you're talking to me, but on our website there are areas that are bolded and they have a whole description, and those basically, it's a little oversimplified.
Oh wait, do I hear something similar to what Laurie was talking about? This isn't a fishing expedition.
It's a research
right, okay,
thing.
right.
And now we actually like people to have everything figured out in terms of here's the data about what the problem is, here's a good definition of the problem, here's how we're going to solve it, and then on this alignment piece, if multiple organizations approach us together with almost a charter, and sometimes it is a charter, and say, we have these businesses on board, these associations on board, these colleges on board, we're all committed to this shared goal. Sometimes it takes multiple years to get to that level, but if they have that, that's a very different meeting with us than, one part of a network that has a good idea and wants us to connect the whole network. So the more you can have everything aligned up front when you come to a large funder or to a state leader, that's a different conversation altogether than kind of a one-off, the way that we think about it.
So I think what I heard was know who we are, as an organization, know what we do well.
Right.
And in our vernacular, we're now calling these proof points. Don't tell me that you do wonderful things.
That's right.
How do I know? Tell me some proof that you do wonderful things. And then I also heard, what can we solve? And the value of doing that. I think, Ian, before the session, you and I were talking about, like, is the problem really worth solving? How do you begin to look at that issue?
Yeah, I mean, resources, no matter how much you have, they are still limited, and really trying to be able to say, how do we do two things? One, how do we pull out our highest priority problems? And for me, that's kind of saying, where are the leverage points? Because if I can find leverage points, then you can increase the impact of whatever the work is that you're doing. And that's why I believe that kind of alignment's important, so that we're finding the leverage points to be able to make that happen. Because there's never enough money. So, and the other is really trying to say, not only the high priorities, but have you thought about how you can bring your resources to the table as well. I mean, bring the work that you're already doing, but by an alignment. So I'll just go back to my example. One of the things we did is say in these partnerships, we'll provide some dollars for helping. We know there needs to be kind of a backbone here of support for data collection and reporting, so people can be able to track what they're doing. Somebody does have to provide some coordination and pull these partners together and align what they're doing and make sure the conversations are helping. But you're going to have, so we'll provide some money through a grant process for that, but at the same time, you have to match that, and you have to bring your own in-kind resources to that table, because we're looking for collective impact.
So I'm going to ask, is anybody here from Utah? Okay, we have a couple people, but I'll risk this nonetheless. Ann, are you ever surprised when a group comes in to see you during appropriation season? This is appropriation season in Washington. Are you ever surprised by how ignorant they are of the pressures that face you in the state budget process? I mean, it kind of goes back to Jason's question about homework. How well do we do our homework when we're coming to see you?
Well, actually, most of the people who come to see me are, at least during the appropriations process, it tends to be the folks are pretty knowledgeable about the process, but that doesn't mean they're not going to come and advocate now. Remember, I spent 20 years down there in my roles at Weaver State, kind of holding up the walls of the Capitol myself, making the pitch for my institution. Yeah. So I understand that really well, and that's part of the advocacy work that they need to do. But I think what's hard for people is to realize that there are only a limited number of resources, and that at some point in time you have to try to determine what are the highest priority needs, and with that you're really looking at what's going to have the most significant impact and make the most difference. And you just cannot fund every good idea that's out there. We all want to make a difference. I think that's why you serve. That's why you're serving where you are. That's why people serve at the end of the day in lots of government and in legislators. They want to make a difference. The question is, what makes the most difference?
Right. I want to come back to that point, Ann, because we talked earlier about the process. But I want to ask you guys, the I&O, as I call it, the Innovation and Opportunity Act, the I&O really does put a premium on the boards convening conversations, the boards looking at, and Laurie, Texas is an example of where you have a lot of the workforce, virtually all of the workforce development funds. How hard is it, how hard has it been, and Jamai, from your perspective in working with some of the, quote, institutions, how hard is this alignment? I mean, Laurie, does this go back to your point about what is it you do instead of coming on the fishing expedition for how much money do you have?
Yeah, I will say that having workforce boards entrusted with
all of the money, we're shaking hands with ourselves, where we watch our peers across the nation trying to cobble together partnerships between workforce and TANF and food stamp. So by having it all concentrated through state law and into the boards, and the convening then being a natural, we cut down on a lot of the stress points that are going on in boards that don't have that blessing of being able to say the money is here, the overhead is covered. You know, we're going to take a hit on WIOA funds, probably for Dallas County, $2 million lost between adult, youth, and dislocated. And we aren't sweating it because we operate on 4% admin and 4% infrastructure. It allows you to get on with the work of the day, which is let's get people back to work and let's alleviate poverty and let's make sure the kids at 4 can actually enter kindergarten readiness. This is who we are and what we do once all of this is together. It's the non-alignment that was the frustration, the inability to say, every employer needs to be looking at every job candidate, not just, you know, rehab over here because that happens to be the case manager that knew they were looking for a person. It's a pipeline, a single pipeline aligned for the employer, but also, I mean, it's our mission. Employers, better competitive because they have better talent, and the workers better paid because they have better talent and a better community for that. We have a huge poverty population in Dallas. It's not what people normally think of as Dallas. But the adult ed is kicking me, let me tell you. They want 13,000 people in seats for $7.1 million, getting high school diplomas in English as a second language. Wow.
So do you see higher employer satisfaction, Laurie, because you can approach them from doing all of the messy stuff behind the curtain?
Yeah.
They don't have to see that. They have to
No.
see this is the talent that you're looking for?
We have an entire business service unit of over 25 people who hit the streets every day to tell an employer, what do you need? Here's what I've got. Here's my pipeline. I can have people at your door tomorrow. And we're not describing them as welfare people, food stamp people, trained by the community college, et cetera. It's talent. It also allows us, because of the cash and the ability to run a full-service workforce center, we have a hiring day every week in every center. So if a guy walks in and says, hey, look, I need workers. I don't have time to wait for your veterans job fair in November. Oh, come back Wednesday. We will have a hiring event here, and here's your table and 2 chairs, and I'll put 40 people in front of you. Because it is an aligned system, and the outcome is put people in jobs.
Let me bounce over to Patricia, because I want to come back. Jamai, you have sort of you have an interesting position because you're not inside these institutions. You've got to put some glue around the partnerships. But let me ask Patricia, because I think Arizona is an example of where not all that's Texas state legislation that aligns us. How difficult is this alignment that Ann talked about or referenced?
I think historically it's been very difficult, and a lot of partners want to protect their own interests, but I think what we're seeing is really transformative with the INO, and I think that here in the Phoenix metro region, we really are looking, how can we harness that collective potential in a pseudo collective impact model, and so we're really looking at other areas of the country and what we can shamelessly steal, and we'll tell them we're shamelessly stealing it because it's working. And so I think that's the other part, is even though historically it's been very difficult, we're not letting that define us moving forward, and we're really having some of those difficult conversations of what could this look like. And as a workforce director or other directors of other entities, it puts you in a vulnerable spot, because it's like, what do I possibly have to give up or compromise on to get us there? And a lot of people are not willing to put themselves in that position because it's uncomfortable. I mean, it could be my job, it could be, funding. And so I think that's the selflessness of serving, that we have to think about is not about us, it's about the people that we're trying to provide these services to.
Jamai, how, from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think what may be different with us as a nonprofit is we're working really close with the workforce boards. And some others are, but I think there's been this connotation that, oh yeah, they do that. And, I think I know changed that, and thanks to your partnership, Ron and Ob. We believe it's one of our strongest partners in them. Some of them are stronger than others, but definitely in Phoenix, definitely in Dallas, definitely in Albuquerque. We're right there in the middle of it. Sometimes I think, how are we so fortunate to get to work with these smart people that are doing this every day? But I think that a really good leader like these two allow that outside force. And then you've got Walmart Foundation that's making really big investments in workforce boards. And a lot of foundations aren't ready to do that. But that is where the majority of the people that we're talking about come. You know, the community colleges are critical partners in everywhere we work, and obviously critical partners to you guys. But I do think that we feel that the center of this work is there. That's where the data is. One of the things we're tackling, and I think people are open to, is the lack of innovative technologies within the workforce system. It's not meeting the needs of this next generation. And Geo Solutions is a great partner of ours. We love Geo, we love Burning Glass, but you've got really antiquated old systems that take layers for the jobs here to get to. We're working on mobile applications and different things that we hope to pilot with our friends to see how do you reach that next generation of worker where they are with the training they need, the learning they need right there on their device. So those are some of the things we hope that we can bring that will be an asset, because we always not paying for that kind of stuff. So we hope that we can continue to get funders that will help bring the innovations into the workforce system for this next generation.
And I would be remiss, Patricia, if I didn't recognize one of your partners in all of this process. Cynthia, do you want to wave, the director from Phoenix? Okay, Ian, let me ask you this question. This is a really easy one. And Jason, I'm going to ask you your thoughts as well. So they got it all together over there.
Right.
They have really, they've put it together. And now they're coming to you as you're thinking about the budget process. We've been talking about, skills and how do we get better at this sort of stuff. You got a lot of pressure on you as a state legislature. I mean, I watch, one of the things I get to do in DC is watch your numbers, year-over-year revenues and year-over-year expenditures. That's an enormous pressure on you as a state legislator. Who pays for all of this? How do you see that we have resources to do this? It can't all be you, right?
Right, that's true.
In case they had any doubt, right? It's not going to be in the Utah budget.
Well, and I do think what we have to think about, so I'm going to bring my higher ed view of this a bit to the table. And I do think what's important for us to realize is that creating the talent that we need that supports the growth and expansion of our companies and strong economic development is a public good. And I think you have to think about everything that we're doing in workforce development as both a public good and a private good. It's a private good for the individual and a public good for us as states and as a country. And we have to find the right balance of that in terms of the who pays question. And part of that relates to the individual, and part of that relates to kind of state support, particularly for our state-funded institutions. But I also think we have to say that to industry as well. Industry is really the beneficiary of this. And, there have been many times in my career when there have been times that there have been, shortages in particular areas. When I have had, large corporations in our area step to the table and say, if you will develop this program in this way, if you will set up a larger cohort, if you will bring us to our place so we can actually deliver this to our employees who we know we know they're tested, that they fit our corporate structure, but we need to have them develop the skills that will allow them to kind of move to that next level and meet our needs. Can we work with you? So we have to be flexible enough in the higher ed system, both in throughout the system. When I'm talking higher ed, I'm really focused on everything from technical colleges through graduate programs, and I think our needs are that broad, frankly, in terms of what we have and what we need in order to be able to support our employers. But people have to be willing to come to the table and say, not only will you do this, but we will help fund that and we will help support that. It's going to have to be both private and publicly funded for us to be able to do the things we need to do to be able to drive the talent pools we're going to need for this next generation of companies.
So Jason, I know that the Gates does a lot of conversation about, so when we leave, then what's left. How do you all think internally about this notion of who pays when you're talking about skills development?
Well, starting at the very top, we think about this systemically, that the country as a whole, 2/3 of the jobs out there require a post-secondary credential college degree. And at the current rate, community colleges, publics, privates, all of the post-secondary institutions in the country are running about 1 million graduates short per year. It's 11 million over the next 10 years. So employers say they need college graduates or credentialed, post-secondarily credentialed individuals, and people don't have those skills. Now, that said, if you look at what employers are actually doing, they're hiring a lot of people who have some college and no degree, and they have maybe a couple certifications, or, so we look a lot at data from Burning Glass, LinkedIn, others, to try to figure out how we want to approach this problem. We're looking for states predominantly right now, and then large institutions that are trying to make a huge dent in this problem. So, we're in Phoenix. ASU is one of our partners because they've made a commitment to really growing the amount of enrollment that they have, both in this community and then through their online programs all across the country and perhaps even all across the world. There are states that are actually increasing their funding to higher education institutions, and they're not necessarily just putting it all in the institutions, they're putting in the workforce development side too. They're starting to think of workforce and post-secondary not as two sides of something, but the same problem to be solved. So we're looking for institutions and states that are getting creative about this and want to co-fund with us, I guess you could say. People think of the Gates Foundation as very large, but to be honest with you, there's 30 of us on our team, and the $100 million we invest each year sounds like a lot, but it's smaller than the budgets of many colleges, and it's not that much in the grand scheme. When, as a nation, we're spending $400 billion on college and university expenses, and that doesn't even include probably another $200 billion on workforce development activities. So we're at a really tiny bit, and we're trying to figure out which lever points can we invest in. Now, going back to what you guys were saying, I love the passion. You are committed to the same students and people that we care about. We think about students as ranging from age 17 all the way up to 65. Maybe we should even think beyond that. This is a lifelong learning thing. People are getting reskilled, retrained all the time. And I love the way you all were talking about metrics. You knew right off the bat, we've got 25 people, 13,000 folks, 7.1 million. By the way, everybody, that's a great way to talk about what you're doing. And if we just had another 1 million more, we could serve this many more people, and here's the results. That's something that's very important to us, just to give a little flavor of it.
Jason, Gates, across the body of your work, not only here in the U.S. domestically, but around the world, you guys tackle big problems, big issues. We've talked a lot over the last couple of days, and in my world, we talk about it about 7.5 days a week, skills and education. And
right.
Let me ask you, do you guys internally ever sit down and think about one of the roles of education is this preparing? We all eventually go to work. I mean, even, I remind my brother-in-law, the doctor, even he eventually had to go to work after, years and years of education. Mm-hmm. Do you guys pause to think about the other side of this, which is the creating a body civic? I mean, Ann mentioned that this is, we have to think about it. And that's a pretty complex proposition, Ian, to think both of public and private goods. Jason, do you guys ever stop and think about, are you confident that we're creating people who can have this dialogue at the same time we're creating a skilled workforce?
That's a pretty deep question. We're optimistic in the sense of that's everybody that gets hired by the foundation is optimistic that we can solve these problems. I mean, Bill and Melinda are committed to, our whole foundation is committed to, there are diseases out there that are striking people down in their first 5 years of life, and we have the vaccine. We know how to solve that. Let's go solve it and help more people live and thrive. That's the mission of the foundation. All lives have equal value, and what can we do to unlock that value? Our society right now is going through some big turmoil, as evidenced by the elections, as evidenced by just the feeling among many people that shows up in surveys that, you know, on the one hand, college is very expensive and I'm not sure it's worth it, and on the other hand, you need to learn more skills and reskill yourself every 5 years, and how the heck is this going to work? And everybody worries their job is going to disappear next year because employers don't care as much about their employees as they used to, and maybe employees don't care as much about their employers. There's a big sea change that's going on in our society right now, and this is a problem that we have to solve. And it won't be solved by one organization or one group. It's going to have to be solved by collective action. And you know, that's why we're committed to trying to find, I like your warrior example before, we're committed to find sort of systemic, data-driven warriors is the way I would frame it, who are committed to solving this problem, because we can't wait. We have too many people, more than 50% of students in K through 12 are on free or reduced lunch. There is a new majority in America. Not everybody realizes it. You all, of course, realize it. And we need to help those folks quickly get the skills they need to get the middle class or better jobs and move our country forward. Sorry to get on a soapbox there a little bit. But
no, but I think it's critical that we have confidence that there is this dual conversation, because lots of times we bash education about literacy and numeracy and work skills, and we forget that part of this is about being able to carry on in the conversation, being even able to know you're on the ballot, and that these are issues that are important to you. We have about 5 minutes, so let me start with you, Laurie, and walk down the table at the risk of asking a very big question. The INO talks about, it's the first time, I think, in federal policy they start talking about the system of workforce development. What do you see as big challenges for that workforce development system?
And system is the term. It's the only term, in fact, if you're doing the job these days. What we did was collective impact. We hired a social impact architect. Suzanne is a member of our community. She had put us all at a table. It took us 2 years to craft out what's in and what's out of a workforce paradigm. And we came up with the Greater Dallas Chamber. The regional chamber represents 4 counties, the community college, the United Way by virtue of all of the Chase funding that was coming through them, and of course the workforce board. Through that, we're launching a new collective workforce presence, We Are Workforce. The website isn't up just yet. It will be up in a couple of days, actually. Our website, it's wfsdallas.com. I encourage you, we have a regional workforce leadership that is our sector strategy. We also now have this strategy of the community, how the community spends its resources, and that has been long coming. A lot of people, a lot of philanthropy in Dallas, and a lot of United Way money, and a lot of private investments that are either stepping over each other and duplicating, or in fact avoiding the recognition of what already exists. And we're going to stick with this until we get the recognition that certain things are in place, certain things are still needed. It's not pick your, cause celeb. We need to actually use these 100 million goes nowhere. Our budget's 90 mil. More than half of that goes into early child development, because in fact, that's our workforce in 15 years. Those kids are the job holders. If we don't spend a little time and money on them,
if we don't want to have
dead.
the groundhog conversation, we need to invest.
Our system is actually cradle to career. Our mayor says it all the time, and now we've put teeth in it, and we are doing cradle to career.
Yeah, when I think about the system, we've really brought on some great leaders, including Scott Fass, that have helped us think of a system approach, because there's a lot of random acts of greatness around workforce. And so everything we're trying to do is systemize it in a region and have it roll up into the national framework. So there's a few national things going on, connecting credentials. Yesterday I was on a badging panel with MacArthur Foundation, and this whole badging thing that's starting to happen, which is a little worrisome because it's very supply side driven. So, I would say when we look at it from a system approach, we put the employer in the center. So we're looking at it from an employer-driven model, and it's really painful to get the employers to shift. For any employers here that are shifting your hiring models, thank you. It works. We have employers doing that. In Salt Lake City, we have lots of employers hiring based on competencies and credentials that have been developed by UVU and Salt Lake Community College. But it's really hard work. So when we look at this system, we do really put the employer there, because if the employer doesn't provide that articulation of what they need and what they're going to hire against, then it's really impossible for everybody to train and educate against it.
Patricia?
I think to echo a little bit and build upon what Laurie and Jamai have mentioned is really the law prior to the INO was around for a long time, and it's conditioned us. And so behavior modification, if you've done anything with counseling or, rearing children or anything of that nature, people's behavior does not change quickly because there's fear, there's that learning curve, they have to master those skills, and I think we have to set new expectations. And so I know with the work we're doing here in Phoenix, we're really trying to, one, be innovative leaders and set a new vision for what our expectations are of moving forward, which are trying to break out of some of those norms that have been cultivated under this very long, duration of the prior law. And laws are great guides, and I think, we definitely want to meet the minimum of the law, but it's the minimum. And to exceed what the law is asking is really our new norm here in Phoenix. And I think that's something that we're really trying to pay attention to. And then really talking to our constituents and talking to our partners of what are, our challenges. And awareness is a huge issue. I heard it in many sessions I've sat in, in being here, is there's so much going on and there's so many options. Which ones are good? Which ones are bad? Which ones should I do? Which ones fit me? So awareness is a huge issue in every realm. Access to those services, a very small percentage of people actually have access to technology. And all of us in this room, we probably have pretty good access, but those that don't, we don't understand the challenges that they have to overcome, or we're just really starting to dig into what are those barriers that they have to overcome to get that access. And then, from there, really, like, Jamai mentioned, is getting that business partnership and really solidifying those commitments that they are in it just as much as the rest of us. Because I think in the old law, they were on the recipient end. It was, let us pipeline these people to you. And that dialogue is an old dialogue now. It is, what is the partnership? What is the connection? What is the commitment that we both have on both ends, so that this isn't just a one-way situation. So I think some of those are huge issues, and really, change management is a big piece of all of this, and it's going to challenge our norms like we've never seen.
And the big issue in your mind facing the workforce development system?
For me, it's how do we begin to build stackable credentials that are focused on the high-impact job needs in our area. And we have to get there. We can't continue to do it in silos. We have to figure out how we're going to stack those credentials so that we can have an efficient, effective systems that we can afford. And on the other side, that we can really clearly communicate these pathways to students and parents. I don't think this is any more about, we're always talking about college or career. You need to make a decision. This has got to be college and career throughout your lifetime. And we have to get focused on clearly communicating those pathways that give people clear entrance and exit points all along the way, along a continuum, and much more of a lattice, not a ladder, but in lattice frameworks that can be flexible, that we can pull modules in and out, and get really focused on how we help create those. But that's going to take the collective work across our agencies to make that happen.
Jason?
I'm going to say ditto plus a little bit more, because we are literally two halves of the same brain on this. The only addition I'll add is that a lot of people talk about most of these new jobs are STEM jobs, and they are. But if you look inside that, 65% of those jobs are actually technology-related jobs. And so a big part of the trend here, and this is why employers are looking for, do you have a degree, do you have a certificate, is do you have the technology aptitude for this job? And so where we're seeing the most change actually is certificate programs and other alternative methods of giving people the technical skills they need quickly in a stackable credentials, transferable credit sort of way, so you can quickly get that $40,000 a year job. Just a quick example, there are people who are now attending some of the best boot camps in the country that are going from making less than $30,000 a year to getting $100,000 a year jobs or more. Now this is rare, and this is only happening in Seattle and San Francisco, but technology-related jobs, if you look at all these openings, they all have huge amounts of technology in them, and so that's a major trend that's underappreciated by most people, is that's where the jobs are.
As I listen to you all, I'm reminded my grandmother, rest her weary soul, always used to tell me that the Lord can move mountains, but she expects you to bring a shovel. I think what I heard from all of you is there is a lot of work ahead. We better get in this game together. We individually can't do it. Please join me in a round of applause to thank Jason Palmer, Senator Ann Millner, Patricia Wallace, Jamai Blivin, and Laurie Larrea. Thank you.
So good.